In this video, I'm going to talk about the pro-Palestinian protests that have been going around first across US universities and now in Canada also. I normally don't share my opinions, right, as such without any data and all, but in this case, I will. And again, I would want to apologize if these feelings hurts anyone and all. I also want to acknowledge that opinions change with time. My thinking has evolved a lot in like last 2 or 3 years or last 5 years. My personality has changed a lot in last 10 years, right? Maybe I'm a completely different person in the last 10 years. So our opinions change with time. We should not stick to any particular opinions and all. We learn as humans. We should try to evolve our opinions also based on our understanding. Other is your opinions would be very different based on the current personal situation where you are. Suppose either you are on the Israel side or on the Palestinian side, and your kids have been killed. Your opinion would be very, very different, right? Or your kids are held hostage. Your opinion would be very, very different as compared to a normal person like me who is just sharing these opinions from outside, right? Who is not at all deeply involved into the situation. So I think like when we talk about these protests and all that have been done by the student, first of all, kudos to them because they are putting their careers online and all to do these protests. And society should always have a place for these like protests, right? Which are non-violent and all, right? So even if it's universities or anybody else, everybody should have a space for these protests and all. So I think like what these students are demanding is these students are demanding like the university should cut ties, right, with some of the employers like Amazon or like Microsoft or Google and all who are providing infrastructure to Israel government or like to or like Israel military and all, right? Will it be implemented? I don't think so. Are they raising voice? Is it a valid concern? I think they are highlighting some issue. Basically, what is the core issue which we should look at, which we should support, right? Here, I'm going to share my screen. So I think when we all, like whenever we are looking at these issues, and I feel very sad because even the media, right, the media which should be non-opinionated and all, which should not spread hate, always the always all of these protests, they are either colored under like Israel versus Palestine thing, right, issue, or should Israel and Palestine should be one state versus two state, or it's always talked about anti-Semitism and all, or it's Hamas versus Israel, or it's Jews versus Muslims, right? So you can choose to have a side, right? And then you can say this is correct or not. I personally feel like the borders could change, right? Depending upon it has always changed in the history, right? And I initially, again, this opinion has changed in the last few years. I always thought like the borders are fixed and all, but throughout history, we have seen as the economic conditions change and all, so the borders and all of the countries could change, right? But something which is constant, which will always be, does not matter, does not change with the time, is killing of civilians, right? It is always bad, irrespective where you are, on which side you are, right? So we saw in October, right, a lot of Israeli civilians were killed. A lot of civilians are held hostages and all, which is bad. And now we see it on the Palestinian side also, close to 35 to 40,000 civilians have already been killed, and most of them are kids, right? Close to 60 to 80% of them are kids. So I think the college students, they should have also a clear message. And then on these things, we should be united, right? Doesn't matter you're from Israel or from Palestine, doesn't matter you agree upon the borders or not, at least on the killing of civilians, right? You should oppose Hamas also, who had killed like Israeli civilians, which was a horrific attack. And now the crimes, the war crimes that have been committed, and civilians who are getting killed in Palestine, that also should be protested. Again, kudos to the people who are risking their jobs, who are risking their careers and all, and who are trying to do the protests. Again, like my message is that these protests should still be non-violent. Universities, the countries, they should create a space for these protests and all. And right. And again, there are certain things that we can have, we can differ on, right? Which is whether the solution to Palestine and Israel, whether it's a two-state or a one-state solution, something like that, right? Whether it's Hamas versus Israel and all, who is good, who is bad, it would change based on where you live, right? What your current personal situation is. But I think one thing which we all should agree upon, which we all need to agree upon as humans, is there should be zero killing of civilians, right? We should never compare whether it was 10 civilians versus 2,000 civilians. That situation also not be covered. Each and every civilian is equally important, right? So we should always talk about the bad things that happen in October in the attacks, right, in which civilians were killed, civilians are still hostage, and the bad things that are happening each and every day, where a lot of civilians are still getting killed, right? We have seen a lot of aid workers are killed right now. Kids are like not getting like proper food, like there's malnutrition now. So those things should be covered. At least the civilians should not suffer, and that should be the clear message. And this is also what my clear message is. Again, does not matter from which country you come and all. These are governments, right? Governments have their own interest. Leaders have their own interest, right? So some of the leaders, they want to divide the society so that they can be in power always. Doesn't matter from which country you are, right? Almost 80 to 90% of the leaders would always want to divide the society so that they could rule. But as citizens of any country, we have to make sure that there is no killing of honest civilians at all, especially no killing of kids. If you have, and again, this you will only realize when you have a family and when you have kids and when you love them and all. Only then you will have empathy, like how important it is to make sure, like, not disturbing civilians, not disturbing families and all, right? Making sure well-being of the families and all is being there. Again, the current situation and what happened in October, like also, right, with Israel, that pains my heart. And again, my wishes are still with like both Israelis and Palestine families who are suffering. Families should not suffer. These are government issues. And as civilians, we should come together, make sure no war crimes are committed, right? And make sure like we are not supporting any of the sides and all when it's about targeting the civilians and all.